and welcome to the Two Consoles Too Late podcast. I'm the host, Jackson Keebler, and I am Two Consoles Too Late. What does that mean? Here at this podcast, we look at the classics and the not-so-classics of retro gaming, often for the very first time, and with no nostalgia. And here on episode 161, we are looking at Zoop, America's largest killer of time, second only to this podcast. And we're going to do some going long because Starblade Alpha has been to hell and back. And if you think Artemis 2 went on a journey, wait till you hear about this. And over on Auction Alert, we're just going to do a general checkup on the shop Goodwills to see what's out there in retro gaming goodness. This podcast isn't going to be a chart topper, but who cares? I got time to kill, and what better way to kill it than Zoop? Let's get started.
Going long. It is going long. Looking long.
All right, so if you clicked on this podcast because of the sexy new podcast icon that's just black and white, modern, clean, simple, thank you. And if you're a regular listener to the show, welcome back. I redesigned the podcast icon, and I'm quite proud of it. It's just, I should have done that in the first place. It's not that brown monstrosity I had before with all the crap on it and my name, and you couldn't tell it was a Nintendo controller. Anyway, back to the show.
Going long. It is going long. Looking long. Going long. It is going long. Looking long.
All right, what's going on with that PS1 long box collection? Well, I shall tell you. If you did not know, I acquired the holy grail of the PS1 long box collection. I got Starblade Alpha at a seriously reduced cost, and it took forever to get here, and I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. But I have acquired not one copy, but 2 copies of Starblade Alpha. So another copy of Starblade Alpha came up on the eBays, not complete in box, didn't have the manual, but it looked, the case itself looked a lot better. It didn't have a broken hinge, it didn't look like the artwork was peeling, didn't have damage to the actual cover. So I just went ahead and I bought that copy, and I was like, okay, that's the one I'm going to keep, and this first copy that I bought, I'm just going to put back on eBay, with full disclosure of all the damage, and just hopefully try to recoup some of my costs, because I didn't realize just how damaged it was. I knew it wasn't in good condition, but once I actually got my hands on it, it was a different story. So anyway, here is the lengthy path that Starblade Alpha underwent just to get here in Baltimore. So Starblade Alpha was purchased on Tuesday of March 24th. All right. But it didn't arrive to the studios of Two Consoles Too Late. It didn't arrive until April 7th. All right. Now, I am not a big fan of the Postal Service. If I sell anything on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and I ship it, I use UPS. I'd rather use UPS or FedEx. The reason I use UPS is because there's a UPS store right up the street, and for the cost of shipping, it's sometimes it's a little bit better than the post office. But anyway, so this is the journey that Starblade Alpha underwent. Now, I made a video in iMovie because I thought about doing a video podcast of this. And it was like one of those Indiana Jones maps where the red line goes from dot to dot to dot. But I just sort of scratched that. So here is the path. Let's cue up a little music. I can't use Indiana Jones because I'll get copyright infringement. So I think I'm gonna cue up some Zoop music. All right, so March 24th, Starblade Alpha leaves Decatur, Mississippi. From Decatur, Mississippi, it travels to Jackson, Mississippi. The irony is too good. And it arrives Wednesday, March 25th. From Jackson, Mississippi, it goes to Memphis, Tennessee. It is now Thursday, March 26th. From Memphis, Tennessee, it goes to Indianapolis, Indiana, and now it's Friday, March 27th. From Indianapolis, Indiana, it goes to Philadelphia on Saturday, March 28th. Now, from Philadelphia, it just had to head south and come to Baltimore, but it did not. From Philadelphia, it went to Fort Wayne, Indiana on March 31st. And then from Fort Wayne, Indiana, it went back to Indianapolis, Indiana. All right? So from Indianapolis, Indiana, it goes back to Fort Wayne, back to Indianapolis. All right? Now this is April 1st, so this is like an April Fool's joke being done on me. So on April 1st, it goes from Indianapolis, Indiana, back to Philadelphia, PA. It's now April 2nd. But no, it's not done. It goes back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then from Fort Wayne, Indiana, it goes back to Indianapolis, sits in Indianapolis for the weekend of Easter. Then it goes back to Philadelphia on Sunday, April 5th. And then finally, it gets to Baltimore Sunday, April 5th, but it doesn't arrive here in studio until April 7th. What the fuck is wrong with the Postal Service?
Stick it!
So I actually called the Postal Service and I had to open a ticket and just be like, what the hell's going on with this game? You know, is it mislabeled? What's going on? And I got really worried. I messaged the seller. I was like, look, this thing is lost in transit, you know, is it going to arrive damaged? I don't know. So given the ordeal that it underwent, it finally got here, and all the damage on the case that was in the pictures, none of it was from it being in transit. It wasn't packed very well, but it's here. And I played it and I tested it, and it works. But I'm going to send that on to the eBays. And of course, I have to do some shameless self-promotion here at the podcast because that's what I do. Every Saturday morning, 7:30 a.m. on YouTube and Twitch at Two Consoles Too Late, you can see me streaming a game from the PS1 Longbox Collection. In this past live stream, I played College Slam for March Madness. And I played as UConn. My plan was to play as UConn versus Duke. Now that was an Elite 8 matchup. I didn't do a bracket this year, so I didn't really follow the tournament too well. So that was my plan, to play as Duke versus UConn in the game. And I was able to choose Duke, but then my opponent was Arizona. Little did I know that Arizona was actually in the Final Four. They lost to Michigan. The championship matchup was Michigan versus UConn. And looks like Michigan won 69-63. So the boys over at the Lost Joystick Network, I'm pretty sure they're happy about that. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Anyway, so I played College Slam. Interesting game. It's 2-on-2 basketball, and the sprites are very cartoony. The only thing I guess it could have been similar to in my limited experience with sports games is NFL Blitz. Used to play that with some coworkers when I was in tech support. So I did a live stream of College Slam. I only played the first half, but it was a bit of a nail biter. Once again, I'm not very good at sports games. But every Saturday at 7:30 a.m., YouTube and Twitch, I'm doing a live stream of a game from the PS1 Longbox Collection. And of course, this Saturday, I have to do Starblade Alpha. And in my very brief testing of the game, it played a lot like Star Fox, but it was not Star Fox. So be sure to check that out Saturday morning, 7:30 a.m. And also, I have a bit of a retraction correction to make here at the podcast. I'm not sure if it was in the bonus podcast of Going Long or here on the main podcast. I said that Triple Play 97 was the best baseball game in the PS1 Longbox library of the three games. And that is Triple Play 97, Bases Loaded 96, and Bottom of the Ninth. But I forgot two games that I don't have. I don't have Hardball 5, and I don't have Frank Thomas's Big Hurt Baseball. So I erroneously said that Triple Play 97 was the best baseball game, but I still haven't played two of those games. So I think those might be some recent acquisitions if I can find some fairly inexpensive copies. Frank Thomas Big Hurt Baseball long box goes for $23.99 according to Price Charting. I thought it was a little bit more than that, but that's not too bad.
Gross! He never stops. Look at the way he moves. Up and down. He must be double jointed. You gotta see this.
At least he's better than yesterday.
Zoop, America's largest killer of time.
Zoop. Now, how did I come to Zoop? Well, that's fairly obvious. Zoop is a PS1 long box game. And it's fun to say. It's cathartic. It could be a noun. It could be a verb. We're going to see it as a verb later. That's how I came to Zoop. I didn't even know about this game until I started collecting for the PS1 long box collection. I knew that it was a puzzle game, but I didn't know it was such an interesting puzzle game. To the point where I did the live stream of Zoop, and it lasted not well over an hour, but it lasted longer than an hour. And that's sort of like the barometer of how much I like a game on the live stream is, if it lasts longer than a half an hour, then I'm interested. Because, I've said it once, I'll say it again, a lot of those live streams don't last too long because the games are really bad. Anyway, so that's how I came to Zoop. And here at Two Consoles, I don't like low-hanging fruit. I don't like easy targets. I don't want to talk about Tetris. I don't want to talk about Ninja Gaiden. I don't want to talk about Castlevania, blah, 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 because those games have been talked to death. So when it comes to talking about Zoop, I think I'm one of the rare few quote-unquote content creators talking about this game. But it's just a fun, interesting puzzle game. And, in my limited research, it's kind of ubiquitous across multiple platforms. So in the mid-90s, puzzle games were everywhere. And following the global success of Tetris, developers and publishers were racing to create the next addictive hits. So we got to see games like Columns and Dr. Mario, and they proved that simple mechanics could translate into a massive success. So along comes Zoop, and it's not put on 3 different consoles. It's put on 9 different platforms, and this game is backed by a very aggressive marketing campaign. Zoop attempts to redefine how puzzle games work. It trades slow strategy for constant pressure and reflex-driven gameplay. So Zoop is developed by Hookstone. They were in the UK. And it was published by Viacom New Media. And Zoop was part of a broader effort by Viacom to enter the video game market. But unlike many competitors, Zoop launched simultaneously across multiple systems. Now, here are those systems in no particular order: Sega Genesis, Game Boy, Game Gear, Atari Jaguar, Sega Saturn, SNES, PlayStation, PC, and Mac. Now, I was like, okay, that's pretty astounding, because when you think of a game that's on that many platforms, you would think of something like Mortal Kombat. That was a game that it's on everything. Another game that comes to mind is Doom. But that was a strategic move by Viacom to have maximum exposure and try to reach as many players as possible, and to position the game as a major release rather than a niche experiment. Zoop was heavily marketed by Viacom New Media. The marketing leaned heavily into, I guess, the addictive quality of the game, and it used the slogan right on the cover, and it is trademarked, "America's largest killer of time." I thought that was great. I was like, you know what? We're going to put our cards on the table. These games don't have a lot of worth, and you're probably just going to be playing this game as a time suck. And it's a wonderful time suck. But the message was clear. This game was designed to consume your attention.
There is no blood. No one dies. This is Zoop, the game, and we're so sure you'll get hooked, we're offering you this great deal. Rent Zoop, a second video game rental free at Blockbuster Video.
Zoop,
If you start, you won't stop.
But at first glance, Zoop appears simple, but its design is fundamentally different from other puzzle games of the time. So instead of managing fallen pieces much like you do in Tetris, the player controls a central shape on the screen, and then from all four directions, colored shapes move inwards towards the center, and the center is a 4x4 square. Your job is to eliminate the colored shapes before they reach the center square. Pretty simple, right? And you do this by firing your shape outward. And if the colors match, the incoming pieces are destroyed. So the core mechanics of Zoop are 4-directional shooting, color matching. Now, the color matching had me scratching my head a little bit because when I saw that this game was on Game Boy, I'm like, okay, well, how did they do that? Instead of doing colors, it was kind of like a shade. Like there was the different shapes had different patterns, which was how they overcame the graphic limitations on the Game Boy. Anyway, so you had color matching. The speed increases over time, which increases the difficulty. And the score multipliers through chains, much like you would get a Tetris in Tetris. I'm going to be sort of comparing out to Tetris a lot because, I mean, that is the puzzle game that everyone knows and loves. And here I am talking about Zoop, a puzzle game that no one knows and hopefully people love. All right, so the scoring of Zoop, I have to go to the manual. And this is why I don't do a video podcast, because I have to put on my readers to read this right from the manual. So depending on the number of shapes that are eliminated, you get a total number of points. So one shape, 100, 2 points, or 2 shapes, you get 300 points. 3 shapes, you get 600 points. 4 shapes, you get 1,000 points. 5 shapes, you get 1,500. And then it says 5,000 for a full vertical column. 6 shapes, you get 2,100. 7 shapes, you get 2,800. But you get 10,000 for a full horizontal row. My gameplay of Zoop was a low scoring affair. I think I maxed out at 50,000. Just a shade over 50,000. I'm not sure what the high score records for Zoop are, but I'm sure that they can be had somewhere on the interwebs. But like Tetris, you can wait for a high scoring opportunity, but when you do that, there is risk involved because to get a high scoring opportunity, you have to let those shapes come closer to the center. In my gameplay, I was very reactionary. I tried to keep those shapes as far away from the center as I possibly could. So I wasn't really playing for score. I was playing more for survival. But there is a high scoreboard after your game is over. And there is a category for zooped. All right, they made it a verb, past tense. And I don't know what that meant. That so many lines were zooped. But I'm not sure what that entailed. So anyway, on the high scoreboard, there is a category for zooped, but I couldn't find out what it meant. I'm just assuming it's how many lines that you completed. Now, there are power-ups in the game, and the power-ups are proximity bombs, which eliminate all the shapes touching the first shape hit, a line bomb, which eliminates an entire row or column of shapes regardless of the color, a color bomb, which eliminates all the shapes in a quadrant that are the same color as the first shape hit, and bonus springs. Collect 5 of the bonus springs and they will clear all the shapes off the grid. Note, if a power-up or a bonus spring reaches the center square, it will disappear. Power-ups and bonus springs will not end the game. In my gameplay, the power-ups didn't really come into play too much. I was never able to get far enough to collect 5 springs to clear the entire board. When I'm playing a game like Tetris, with a game like Tetris, you can sort of manipulate the blocks to create an event, what eventually would be a Tetris. And with Zoop, my pattern recognition wasn't, I'll admit it, I just wasn't that advanced of a player in Zoop to be able to score like that. It's something I'd like to learn, but once again, that takes time. But one of the defining characteristics of Zoop is its difficulty. The difficulty ramps up very quickly, sometimes within minutes, I would say even seconds. This leads to short play sessions, but a lot of high replay value. You're not expected to last long, but you are expected to try again. To the point where I have to wonder why Zoop was not an arcade game. As I was sitting here playing the game, I was like, this would have been a total quarter muncher back in the day, but Zoop is not an arcade game. So I was fortunate enough not to be able to play one version of Zoop. I was able to play two versions of Zoop. I played, of course, the PS1 long box version first. But right now I am in possession of an Atari Jaguar collection, and one of the games in the collection is Zoop. And I saw this video on the YouTubes saying that Zoop graphically was better, probably the best version of all 9 versions of the game across different platforms. The difference that I saw graphically in the Jaguar version wasn't great, but there was definitely a difference from the PlayStation version. I did not download a ROM for the Game Boy version. I'd be curious just to give it a shot, especially with those the limited graphics of the Game Boy. All right, there's the track Blizz from the PlayStation version of Zoop. The soundtrack for Zoop on the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn was a little bit different from other versions because it had those upbeat electronic ditties. I prefer them more, even though they're a little bit repetitive. But the music composition was done by Eddie Chambers, and the sound and music design was done by Brian Schmidt. So what is the reception and the response to Zoop? Well, it received mixed to positive reviews. Critics consistently pointed out that it had some originality. The idea of reversing the puzzle formula, bringing the danger inward instead of just, dropping pieces downward, that was recognized to be rather creative. The innovation did come with some trade-offs. So the common praise was that it was a unique concept, fast-paced gameplay, and it was kind of easy to learn. But the game itself was considered to be repetitive over time, had limited depth, and a high difficulty barrier. It's a little difficult. It's just a different beast. That's all it is. So while the game succeeded in grabbing attention, it struggled to maintain long-term engagement compared to its competitors. And despite all that wonderful marketing that we heard, Zoop didn't really take off. It didn't really become a system seller, and it didn't spawn any major sequels. But it didn't disappear either. Across 9 platforms, Zoop kind of holds its value. Sega Genesis, CIB $11, Game Boy, CIB $30, Sega Game Gear, CIB $23, Atari Jaguar, $49, Sega Saturn, $31, Super Nintendo, $20, PlayStation Longbox, $34, and PC and Mac's not on price charting, but I found an eBay listing for $24. So it's not super expensive, but it's not cheap either.
Auction. Alert.
All right, so I went through the Shop Goodwills, and I went through the Sega Genesis and SNES game lots looking for a copy of Zoop. Hopefully, thinking there might be one, but alas, a copy of Zoop could not be had. And so if you want a copy of Zoop, you're going to have to head on over to the eBays, depending on which platform you want Zoop on. But I did bookmark some sold listings. This came from the Goodwill of North Central Wisconsin. They had a whole bunch of Star Wars big box PC games that were sealed. And I bookmarked them just to kind of see what they would go for. Star Wars Force Commander went for $62. Star Wars Jedi Knight, which is Dark Forces 2, that one went for $81. X-Wing Alliance went for $43. And the X-Wing Collector Series, which was X-Wing TIE Fighter and X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, that went for $33. So I just bookmarked those, just once again out of curiosity to see what they would go for. If I had some mad FU money, I think I would have tried to pick up Jedi Knight because I actually have some nostalgia for that one. But I just picked up a copy of Twilight Princess for the GameCube, and there's been a whole bunch of copies of that game on the shop Goodwills. A couple sold listings. We got 171, 154.53, and 125.99. I have one bookmarked listing that's active. This ends on the 12th. It's Twilight Princess for the GameCube with the manual, and it's only got 2 bids. It's up to $51. I'm sure it's going to go at the $150 mark, but it is covered in GameStop stickers.
Stick it!
It's so tiresome to see these stickers all over video games. That's going to be GameStop's legacy. Is we covered the world's video games in stickers. But there are a couple long box games, both of which I already have. The Raiden Project, coming from the Ohio Valley Goodwill Industries. That right now is at $9.99 with only 1 bid. And a copy of XCOM UFO Defense. It's coming from the Goodwill of Tulsa. That's got 1 bid. That's at $15. But once again, it's covered in GameStop stickers.
Stick it!
All right, so what are my closing thoughts on Zoop? Well, it is a fun little puzzle game, and I highly recommend it. If you like games like Tetris, you're definitely going to like Zoop. It's different. I came to it because it's a PS1 long box game. Once again, I was fortunate enough that I could play it on the Jaguar, just to kind of see if there were any real differences other than the soundtrack. Not really. Some minor graphical differences, but nothing that was mind-blowing. But as I was playing Zoop, I really got to thinking, why isn't this like a mobile game? And my only thought on why you can't get this game on iOS or Android would be maybe the controls. I think that might be a little difficult, especially with that 4x4 grid. But I highly recommend it. It's a good time killer. My high score so far is only just a shade over 50,000. But I'm sure if I sunk more and more hours into the game and started to develop the strategies and learn how to use those power-ups more, that score would just go up and up. But I highly recommend Zoop. It is America's largest killer of time, and that is a trademark slogan from Viacom New Media. All right, so before I wrap up the podcast, what am I doing? What am I buying? What am I playing? What am I selling? A whole bunch. I'm playing Twilight Princess for the GameCube, of course. I want to get my money out of that game. I'm live streaming that on YouTube and Twitch at 2 Consoles Too Late. But concurrently, I'm also playing Zelda Breath of the Wild for the Wii U. And I have to say, I'm not a big snob when it comes to graphics and games, but there is a very noticeable frame drop in the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild. And so I can see why it wasn't a big seller on the Wii U. But I'm just giving it a chance. And apparently you're supposed to, play your Wii U every couple months so it doesn't, turn into a brick. At least that's what I've heard. But a funny little story, I was kind of having a shit day at work. And I was in the parking lot of the shopping center, and there was a GameStop. And I walk into the GameStop, and here I am, sullying the name of GameStop and how much they suck. But time and time again, I find myself going back and looking for games. Anyway, so I go into this GameStop, and they've got the retro shelving unit. It's like 2 shelves of games, and one of the games they had was Zelda Breath of the Wild for the Wii U. It's $20, and I was like, you know what? I need a little dopamine, so I picked myself up a copy of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And my GameStop membership has expired, and they were like, you want to renew that for $25? And I was like, no. But I have to say that when I did have the membership, it actually came in handy. So here I am, saying that, GameStop, I don't want to be one of those people that say, GameStop's evil. You know what? They're a business. They're just trying to make their buck. I'd rather support a local independent, but at the time, I needed a little happiness in my life. So I picked up a copy of Breath of the Wild for the Wii U. And what am I selling? Well, I'm selling a whole bunch of camera stuff. Last week, I went to a flea market down in Glenbury, Maryland. I had no idea that this flea market even existed. My son and I went for a bike ride down by the airport. There's a trail that goes all around the airport. And after our bike ride, we decided to go have lunch at Five Guys. And on the way, I saw this flea market. And I asked my son, I said, do you want to stop? He was pretty adamant. He said, no. So I went by myself last week after I did the live stream of College Slam. And one of the first vendors I came to had a whole bunch of camera stuff. And I actually got POV video of it. I was gonna do a Flea Wars video, and I might still do it, but other than these cameras, there wasn't much there. There was actually no video game resellers. And so anyway, I asked this vendor, I said, how much for the camera stuff? And they said $40 for everything. And, in this lot of cameras, there was a DSLR, there was an Olympus SLR film camera, there was some old Olympus point and shoots, and the memory card for the old Olympus point and shoots, they're actually worth a pretty penny. So I picked it up for $40, and so far, all said and done, looks like profit's going to be around $250. So my second copy of Starblade Alpha is paid for. And I'm probably going to list the crappy copy of Starblade Alpha here shortly after I record this podcast. All right, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I've been the host, Jackson Keebler. You can check me out on the interwebs. Just go to Google and type in 2 Consoles Too Late, and there I will be. And once again, be sure to check out that Patreon at patreon.com/2consoles2late. Lots of goodies over there. You have the bonus podcast of Going Long, some typewriter manifestos, video game notes, and whatnot. And if you support this podcast monetarily, I will send you all the goodies, a signed Walter Day trading card, a typed postcard signed by me with a nice personal message, as well as shout outs on the airwaves. All right, I'm going to get out of here and probably play Breath of the Wild. I don't know. I'm juggling my Zeldas right now. But as always, have a good one. I love you, and goodbye. When you need to know the price of a game, you go to Price Charting, a website that sucks my balls. All right, Frank Thomas Wendy's. All right, what we got here?